The grand assembly hall of the Virexian Concord trembled with the weight of uncertainty as the gathered representatives of the known universe struggled to comprehend the latest reports from the outer systems. At the center of the chamber, High Chancellor Virex, a towering figure of shifting crystalline patterns, addressed the assembly with an urgency that rippled through the air like a quantum pulse. "This session of the Concord is now in order," he announced, his voice resonating in harmonic frequencies that made the walls hum. "We are here to discuss an anomaly that has shaken the very foundations of our understanding: human behavior." A murmur spread through the chamber, some species emitting distress signals in the form of bioluminescent flickers, while others projected holographic symbols of confusion. The Virexian Chancellor's crystalline form pulsed with deep crimson hues, a sign of his growing concern. "We have received reports from multiple sectors indicating that humans, despite their primitive physiology and lack of formal scientific training, are repeatedly engaging in actions that defy known physical and mathematical laws," he continued. "More disturbingly, these events follow a consistent pattern. Each begins with a human uttering the phrase, 'Hold my,' followed by the name of a liquid container." Across the room, Commander Tharok of the Zulari Defense Fleet, a species known for their rigid adherence to logic, leaned forward in his gravity-neutralizing chair. "Surely you jest," he said, his voice a low mechanical drone. "A phrase? A mere utterance? You suggest that a species with no formal understanding of quantum mechanics or hyperdimensional physics is capable of altering the fabric of reality through language alone?" Virex's crystalline form darkened. "We do not jest, Commander. Observe Exhibit 412-A. The chamber's central holodisplay flickered to life, revealing a recording from the edge of the Varnex cluster. The footage showed a human vessel, crude by Zulari standards, encountering a malfunctioning energy core aboard a Yelthari mining outpost. The Yelthari, a silicon-based species, had spent decades perfecting the containment protocols for their reactors. Yet the moment the human captain, identified as Commander Elliot Carter, stepped onto the scene, he casually handed his drink to a nearby technician and said, "Hold my coffee. I've got an idea." Gasps filled the hall as the recording played. Carter, seemingly oblivious to the danger, began adjusting the reactor's controls with a tool that resembled nothing more than a modified wrench. He muttered calculations under his breath, none of which matched known Yelthari equations. Yet within minutes, the reactor not only stabilized, but began generating power at levels previously thought unattainable. The Yelthari technician, stunned, confirmed that the reactor's output had exceeded its theoretical maximum by nearly 140%. "This is an aberration," Tharok insisted. "Surely there must be an external factor, some unknown technology, or perhaps a quantum fluctuation unrelated to the human's presence." Virex's form pulsed with a deep warning violet. "We considered that possibility. However, Exhibit 412-B reveals a similar incident, this time involving a simple maintenance worker aboard a Zarnex transport station. The worker, identified as Joe Kellerman, was presented with a failing gravity generator, a device that requires precise quantum harmonization to function. When informed of the impossibility of a manual fix, he merely handed his drink to a colleague and said, 'Hold my beer. Watch this.' He then proceeded to strike the generator with his tool in a seemingly random sequence. The result? The generator not only resumed operation but achieved an efficiency level that has baffled our top engineers." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some representatives demanded further investigation, while others insisted that the footage was fabricated or misinterpreted. The Yelthari delegation, usually composed, was visibly shaken, their crystalline bodies emitting erratic pulses of light. "This is not possible," one of them whispered. "Our species spent millennia perfecting the mathematics of reactor containment? How could a being with such limited knowledge alter the fundamental properties of our technology in mere moments?" Virex raised a hand, silencing the uproar. "That is precisely the question we must answer," he said gravely. "For if we do not understand this phenomenon, we risk allowing a force beyond our comprehension to shape the future of the galaxy." As the holodisplay flickered, the chamber's air grew thick with anticipation. The footage zoomed in on a scene that had become infamous among the various species. A chaotic moment aboard the Ylthari mining outpost. The reactor, a labyrinth of intricate machinery and shimmering energy conduits, was on the brink of a catastrophic meltdown. Its containment field flickered ominously, emitting bursts of unstable energy that threatened to engulf the entire station. The Ylthari engineers, masters of their craft, were frantically shouting warnings and attempting to stabilize the system with their advanced tools and protocols. Yet, as the tension mounted, it was the arrival of Commander Elliot Carter that would change everything. Carter, a human with a reputation for unconventional problem-solving, stepped into the chaos with an air of calm that contrasted sharply with the panic around him. He glanced at the reactor, his brow furrowed in thought, before turning to his technician, who was visibly sweating. "Hold my coffee," he said, handing over the steaming cup with a grin that seemed to defy the dire situation. "I've got an idea." The technician, caught off guard, hesitated for a moment, then nodded, eyes wide as he watched the human approach the reactor. What followed was a spectacle that left the alien representatives in stunned silence. Carter began to work with a fervor that was both alarming and mesmerizing. He wielded his wrench like a maestro conducting a symphony, tapping on various components with a rhythm that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the reactor. He muttered calculations under his breath, some of which were incomprehensible to the Ylthari, while others were simply absurd, like eyeballing it and what if we just add more whoosh? The engineers watched in disbelief as the reactor's energy levels began to stabilize, the flickering containment field brightening into a steady glow. Carter, unfazed by the complexity of the system, continued to manipulate the machinery with an instinctual understanding that transcended the knowledge of the Ylthari. He adjusted the flow of energy with a series of improvised techniques, tapping into the reactor's core with a mixture of tools that ranged from a standard wrench to a bizarre contraption he called a quantum stabilizer. It was a crude device made from scavenged parts, yet it emitted a low hum that harmonized with the reactor's pulse. "Is he actually fixing it?" whispered a Zalari delegate, their mechanical eyes wide. "But how? He's just tinkering." "Tinkering? He's rewriting the laws of physics," another chimed in. The holographic display capturing the moment Carter's adjustments sent a surge of energy through the reactor, causing it to emit a brilliant flash that illuminated the entire station. The containment field, once on the verge of collapse, now pulsed with a vibrant blue hue, indicating optimal performance. The Ylthari engineers, who had been on the brink of despair, stared at the reactor in awe, their crystalline forms reflecting the light in a kaleidoscope of colors. "Commander Carter has achieved a stabilization level of 143%, one of the Ylthari technicians announced, his voice trembling with disbelief. "This is beyond anything we have ever seen. The equations he used, none of them align with our established models." As the chamber erupted in murmurs of confusion and admiration, Virig's crystalline structure dimmed, absorbing the implications of the moment. "This is not an isolated incident," he interjected, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. "We have documented over 247 similar events in the last standard month alone. Each time, a human uttering the phrase, 'hold my' followed by a beverage name has led to the resolution of a problem deemed impossible." The representatives shifted uncomfortably, their collective anxiety palpable. Some emitted nervous vibrations, while others projected images of their own species in distress. "Sure, this is some form of advanced technology we have yet to understand," Tharek insisted, his mechanical voice rising above the din. "We cannot allow this to be considered a mere coincidence." Virik's form pulsed with a deep, contemplative indigo. "Admiral Tharak, we have explored that possibility extensively. Our analysis indicates that the humans are not utilizing any known technology. They are simply applying their own methods that appear to defy our most fundamental principles of engineering and science." Just then, a new recording was activated, drawing the attention of the assembly. This time, it was footage from the Zarnex transport station, where Joe Kellerman, a maintenance worker, was faced with a malfunctioning gravity generator. The Ylthari technician, visibly frustrated, had just informed him that recalibrating the quantum harmonics would take weeks, a luxury they simply did not have. "Hold my beer," Joe said, his tone casual as he handed the drink to a nearby colleague. "Watch this." With a confident stride, he approached the generator, which was emitting a low, ominous hum. The technician watched in disbelief as Joe kicked the generator at precise points, each strike resonating with a strange energy that caused the machine to sputter and whine. "Is he insane?" a Zolari delegate exclaimed, their eyes widening as Joe continued his assault on the generator. "He's violating every known principle of quantum mechanics." But as the footage played on, the impossible became possible. The gravity generator, which had been a source of despair, suddenly roared to life, humming with a newfound vigor. The technician, who had been convinced of the task's impossibility, was left speechless as the machine began to stabilize, its output surpassing previous benchmarks. The assembly erupted into a cacophony of disbelief and admiration, with some species even projecting images of their own engineers, who were now visibly shaken. "This must be a form of mimicry," Tharuk argued, his voice rising above the chaos. "They are merely copying our technology in a way we do not yet understand." But Virex, with a calm that belied the storm of emotions in the chamber, shook his head. "No, Admiral. This is not mimicry. This is a fundamental shift in how we perceive reality. The humans, with their casual approach and disregard for established norms, are achieving what our greatest minds have deemed impossible. We must understand this phenomenon before it spirals beyond our control." The weight of his words hung in the air, and the representatives exchanged glances, each contemplating the implications of a species that could bend the laws of the universe with nothing more than a beverage and a grin. Determined to unravel the mystery behind the humans' inexplicable abilities, the Virexian Concord initiated a series of experiments designed to replicate the conditions under which the hold my beverage phenomenon occurred. The first attempt was led by Dr. Lyriel, a renowned quantum physicist from the crystalline species of Virex, known for their meticulous approach to scientific inquiry. She gathered a team of experts from various species, each bringing their own unique perspectives and methodologies to the table. "We will observe the human behavior in a controlled environment," she declared, her crystalline body shimmering with excitement. "If we can understand the mechanics of their actions, we may be able to harness this power ourselves." The team set up a simulation in the Concord's experimental lab, replicating a scenario where a reactor malfunctioned. They invited a human test subject, a young engineer named Marcus, who was unaware of the experiment's true purpose. As Marcus entered the lab, he was handed a coffee cup, its warmth radiating through his fingers. "Hold my coffee," he said instinctively, echoing the phrase that had become synonymous with the impossible. The team watched in anticipation, their instruments calibrated to measure any anomalies. But as Marcus approached the simulated reactor, he hesitated. "I've never worked on anything like this before," he admitted, a hint of anxiety creeping into his voice. The team exchanged glances, their hopes dimming as they realized that the essence of the human success might lie not just in their actions, but in their mindset. Dr. Lyrael, undeterred, encouraged him to proceed, but as Marcus attempted to adjust the reactor's controls, the results were far from miraculous. The reactor remained unstable, its energy levels fluctuating wildly. "This is not working," Lyrael muttered, her crystalline form dimming with frustration. "What are we missing?" Undeterred by the failure, the team shifted their focus to linguistic analysis. They hypothesized that the specific phrasing of the hold my phrase might hold the key. Dr. Lyriel enlisted the help of a linguist from the Glimmer species, known for their ability to manipulate sound waves. Together, they crafted a series of alternative phrases, hoping to replicate the effect. They tried maintain possession of my carbonated beverage and temporarily store my liquid refreshment, but each time the results were disheartening. The reactor remained unresponsive, and the team began to question whether the casual nature of the human phrase was integral to its effectiveness. "Perhaps we should attempt to understand the emotional state of the humans when they utter these phrases," suggested Commander Tharuk, who had been observing the experiments with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. "Maybe it's not just the words but the confidence and nonchalance that accompany them." This sparked a new line of inquiry, The team decided to analyze the emotional context surrounding the incidents, diving into the psychological profiles of the humans involved. They invited a human psychologist, Dr. Aria, to join their efforts. As she reviewed the footage, she noted the peculiar expressions on the humans' faces, often a mix of amusement and determination. These humans seemed to approach problems with a sense of playfulness, she explained, her voice filled with wonder. They don't perceive these situations as insurmountable. Instead, they see them as challenges to be tackled with creativity and confidence. The team implemented a new protocol, instructing their own species to adopt a similar mindset when attempting repairs. They gathered representatives from various species and created a mock scenario involving a malfunctioning warp drive. Let's see if we can mimic the human's emotional state, Lyrael proposed. Each participant was given a beverage, and they were encouraged to speak the phrase, "Hold my," followed by their drink of choice, accompanied by a cheerful demeanor. However, the results were far from encouraging. The Glimmer representative, in an attempt to channel human confidence, shouted, "Hold my soda," while striking the warp drive with a tool. Instead of stabilizing, the drive emitted a jarring sound and flickered ominously. The Zalari delegate, with a mechanical precision that left no room for error, tried to adjust the settings with a series of calculated commands. "Hold my energy drink," he declared, but the drive only sputtered in response. The chamber filled with a sense of disappointment as the alien representatives struggled to replicate the success they had witnessed in the humans. "Why can't we achieve the same results?" Lyrael asked, her crystalline form pulsating with a mix of frustration and curiosity. "We possess the knowledge, the technology, and now the emotional intent. What is it about the humans that allows them to succeed where we fail?" The team's discussions grew heated, with some suggesting that the humans' lack of formal training might actually be an advantage. "Perhaps their ignorance of the rules is what allows them to break them," Tharuk mused, his voice laced with a hint of admiration. "They approach problems without the constraints of established thought, thus enabling them to think outside the box." But as they delved deeper into their experiments, the implications of their findings began to shift. They discovered that the phenomenon was not only affecting humans, but was starting to manifest in other species as well. During one of their sessions, a Yelthari engineer, inspired by the footage of Joe Kellerman's gravity generator fix, attempted to replicate the feat. "Hold my juice," he exclaimed, striking the generator with a tool similar to a wrench. To everyone's astonishment, the generator responded, stabilizing momentarily before surging with unexpected energy, causing it to malfunction again. "Is it possible that the human's behavior is contagious?" Dr. Aria pondered aloud, her voice tinged with excitement. Could their audacity and creativity be influencing other species to attempt the impossible? The realization sent a ripple of anxiety through the chamber. If the phenomenon could spread, what would it mean for the stability of the universe? The council began to understand that they were not merely dealing with a quirky human trait. They were witnessing a potential paradigm shift in how reality itself was perceived. The team's experiments continued, with representatives from various species attempting to utilize the "hold my" phrase in increasingly absurd ways. A Reactirian diplomat, known for their diplomatic prowess, tried to use the phrase during a negotiation, declaring, "Hold my tea," before attempting to broker a peace between two warring factions. The negotiations collapsed, and the diplomat was left with a broken teacup and a sense of humiliation. "We are not just failing to replicate the phenomenon," Lyrael lamented. "We are making it worse." As the days turned into weeks, the council's concern grew. They began to notice that some species were adopting the phrase in their own contexts, albeit with mixed results. The crisis had escalated beyond anything the Galactic Concord had ever faced. A quantum singularity, born from an unknown anomaly at the edge of the Varnix cluster, had achieved sentience and was now consuming entire star systems with a voracious appetite. Unlike conventional black holes, this entity did not merely absorb matter, it twisted it, reshaping entire planets into bizarre configurations before devouring them whole. The Concord's finest minds had gathered, deploying fleets, theoretical constructs, and even the ancient chronospheres of the Lyrian order, but nothing had slowed its advance. The entity, seemingly amused by their efforts, had begun to juggle neutron stars and emit gravitational waves that carried an eerie, mocking resonance. It was in this moment of desperation that the idea arose, a last resort, a gamble based on the inexplicable pattern that had haunted the galaxy for the past standard month. If humans, through their casual defiance of impossibility, could bend reality with a mere beverage in hand, then perhaps they could solve the unsolvable. The Concord's emergency broadcast reached Earth within moments, transmitting a single, unprecedented message. Universe-breaking anomaly detected. Humanity's assistance is required. Beverages permitted. Earth's Galactic Emergency Response Team, unofficially known as the Beverage Squad, was assembled with alarming speed. The team consisted of individuals who, by all conventional metrics, should not have been entrusted with such a dire task. There was Chris Forge, a retired plumber who had once repaired a quantum leak with nothing but duct tape and a coffee mug. Dr. Alice Tan, a physicist who had solved a complex mathematical proof through interpretive dance. Jake Simpson, a part-time bartender and amateur engineer who claimed he could fix anything with the right tools and a good playlist. And Ariana Banks, a former roller derby coach who had an uncanny ability to apply kinetic energy principles to impossible situations. Arriving aboard the Concord's flagship, the Eclipse Horizon, the team was briefed on the singularity's nature. High Chancellor Virex, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion, explained the situation with a gravity that bordered on reverence. The entity defies all known laws of physics, he said. It is consuming reality itself. We have tried every known method to stop it. Nothing has worked. Jake Simpson took a sip from his oversized cup of iced tea, his expression unreadable. So, what you're saying is, this thing's basically a reality-eating monster that's immune to logic and technology. Alice Tan nodded, arms crossed. Exactly, which means if we want to stop it, we need something illogical. Chris Forge grinned, tapping his wrench against his palm. Then I think we know what to do. The team huddled in a corner of the command center, their voices low but filled with excitement. Okay, let's think, Ariana said, pacing. The singularity's feeding on structured reality, so if we introduce chaos, maybe it'll get confused. Jake raised an eyebrow. Confused enough to stop? Maybe not stop, Alice admitted. But if we can make it unstable, we might be able to redirect its consumption. Chris nodded. Right. So, how do we introduce chaos? Jake took another sip of his iced tea before responding. We do what we do best. The team turned to face the assembled Concord representatives, their expressions a mix of determination and reckless confidence. We've got a plan, Ariana announced, raising her drink. But, fair warning, it's really stupid. Virex's crystalline form pulsed with a mix of apprehension and reluctant hope. Will it work? Oh, definitely not, Jake said cheerfully. But that's why it'll probably work perfectly. The plan was as audacious as it was absurd. The Beverage Squad would not attempt to fight the singularity with weapons or logic. Instead, they would challenge it with the only force known to consistently bend reality. The sheer, unshakable confidence of a human with a beverage in hand. Their first step was to convert the Eclipse Horizon into a mobile chaos generator. Jake Simpson, wielding his knowledge of sound engineering and an impressive collection of obsolete Earth technology, proposed using the ship's communication array as a massive speaker system. This thing is powerful enough to transmit across the entire sector, he explained. If we blast the right frequencies, we might be able to disrupt the singularity's gravitational harmonics. Alice Tan, ever the physicist with an artistic flair, suggested incorporating visual stimuli. We've seen humans do this before, she said. They don't just use sound, they use movement, color, and sheer predictability. We need to create something that defies structured reality. Ariana, grinning, added, and we need to teach the AI on this ship how to break dance. The Concord's representatives gaped at the suggestion. You cannot be serious, Tharok muttered, his mechanical voice laced with disbelief. You intend to dance at a reality-consuming anomaly? Chris, sipping from his coffee mug, shrugged. Why not? It worked when they fixed a quantum reactor with a wrench and a beer. It worked when they stabilized a gravity generator with a few well-placed kicks. If the singularity feeds on structured reality, then we throw everything we've got at it. Chaos, music, movement, and most importantly, he raised his mug. Beverage. The plan was set in motion. The Eclipse Horizon's AI was reprogrammed to generate erratic, unpredictable dance sequences. The ship's external lighting was modified to pulse in erratic, mesmerizing patterns. And most crucially, the Beverage Squad prepared their own arsenal: coffee, tea, beer, energy drinks, and even a mysterious concoction Jake called zero-gravity slushy. As the ship approached the Singularity's event horizon, the team gathered on the observation deck, drinks in hand. The anomaly loomed before them, a swirling vortex of distorted space, consuming entire planets in a slow, deliberate fashion. It pulsed with an intelligence that was both alien and unsettling. Ariana took a deep breath, then turned to the others. "Ready?" Chris grinned. "Hold my coffee." Alice raised her tea. "Hold my tea." Jake smirked, lifting his slushy. "Hold my drink." And Ariana, with a determined expression, added, "I think I see the problem." The moment the words left their mouths, the singularity paused. The gravitational waves that had been distorting space around it wavered, as if the entity itself had hesitated. The Beverage Squad stepped forward, each of them moving in sync with the erratic dance patterns programmed into the ship's AI. The lights around them pulsed in time with an improvised playlist of Earth music, everything from retro rock anthems to experimental jazz. The singularity reacted. Its form, once a perfect structured void, began to flicker. It emitted a low, confused hum, as if it were trying to process the absurdity of the situation. The Beverage Squad, emboldened by the anomaly's hesitation, intensified their efforts. Chris adjusted the ship's stabilizers with his wrench, muttering calculations that made no sense to the Concord scientists, but somehow worked. Alice, still dancing, reached into her pocket and pulled out a modified gravity lens, using it to redirect the singularity's pull. Then, Jake stepped forward, holding his slushy. "Okay, big guy," he said, his voice carrying through the ship's external speakers. "You've been having fun with your cosmic buffet, but how about we make this interesting?" He pulled out a makeshift drink shaker and mixed a concoction that defied chemical logic. "This is the universe's strongest slushy. Want a sip?" The singularity hesitated. Then, impossibly, it reached out. Not with tentacles or mechanical appendages, but with a gravitational distortion that formed into a crude, swirling shape resembling a hand. It accepted the drink. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a final confused pulse, the singularity collapsed inward, folding into itself until nothing remained but a faint ripple in space. The Beverage Squad, still dancing, exchanged glances. Chris took a sip of his coffee. "Well, that worked." Alice raised her tea. "Of course it did. We never knew if it would, but we tried anyway." Jake, grinning, looked at the empty space where the singularity had been. "Guess we'll have to call this one the Hold My Beverage event." Behind them, High Chancellor Virexian crystalline form pulsed with a deep contemplative violet. "This is beyond comprehension," he murmured. "They didn't fight reality, they rewrote it." As the Eclipse Horizon powered away from the anomaly's former location, the Concord's representatives watched in stunned silence. The Beverage Squad, now legends in the making, had just rewritten the laws of the universe with nothing more than confidence, absurdity, and a well-timed beverage handoff. The Beverage Squad's improbable triumph over the singularity sent shockwaves through the galactic Concord. In the days that followed, scholars, engineers, and diplomats from every known species poured over the recorded data, searching for a logical explanation that simply did not exist. The laws of physics had not been rewritten, nor had any new technology been deployed. Instead, a group of humans, armed with nothing more than coffee, tea, and a few questionable energy drinks, had managed to outmaneuver a cosmic anomaly that had defied every conventional solution the galaxy had to offer. High Chancellor Virexian, his crystalline form still dimmed from the experience, convened an emergency session to formalize a response. The Beverage Squad's actions have proven beyond doubt that human reality distortion is not an isolated phenomenon. he announced, his voice reverberating through the Grand Assembly Hall. It is a fundamental aspect of their existence, one that must be acknowledged and, where necessary, accommodated. This classification placed humans in a category previously reserved for unstable quantum entities and rogue AI, acknowledging their unique ability to alter reality when uttering the phrase, "hold my," followed by any liquid container. The Concord's legal division drafted new interspecies agreements, ensuring that in any critical situation where a human was present, their beverage-related actions would be treated as potential reality-altering events. Next, the Concord issued mandatory beverage containment protocols for all spaceports, diplomatic outposts, and military installations. Every facility was required to maintain a minimum stock of human beverages, not for consumption, but for emergency use. If a human reaches for a drink, we must be prepared, one delegate from the Yelthari Mining Guild declared. The consequences of mismanaging this phenomenon are too great. Some species implemented strict guidelines. Beverages were to be stored in reinforced containment units, accessible only to trained personnel. Others, like the Glimmer Collective, took a more proactive approach, training their own diplomats to recognize the warning signs of an impending "hold my" event and respond accordingly. The Concord's emergency response divisions also underwent drastic changes. The Galactic Crisis Response Unit introduced a new protocol. If a human says, "hold my" followed by a beverage, all non-essential personnel must evacuate, and reality distortion monitors must be disabled. This directive was issued after several incidents where such monitoring systems had malfunctioned due to the sheer improbability of human actions. "Our sensors cannot process the absurdity," one technician admitted. "They either overload or start producing equations that describe pasta." Perhaps the most controversial decision came from Admiral Tharuk, who, despite his initial skepticism, now found himself reluctantly endorsing the Beverage Squad's approach. "We have tried logic," he admitted. "We have tried technology. We have tried diplomacy. And yet, the only solution that has consistently worked is human recklessness." This led to the formation of the Galactic Human Collaboration Division, a new branch of the Concord dedicated to working with humans on impossible tasks. Their first directive was clear. Whenever a human reaches for a beverage and utters the phrase, immediately assign them a problem that should be unsolvable. Meanwhile, humanity, unaware of the bureaucratic chaos they had caused, embraced their newfound reputation. The Beverage Squad, now officially recognized as a reality-warping task force, opened a consulting firm across multiple galaxies. "Hold my beverage. We fixed the impossible LLC." Their business motto became legendary. "If it's impossible, we'll find a way to do it anyway." The company quickly became the most sought-after problem-solving team in the universe, taking on everything from interdimensional rifts to diplomatic conflicts that had lasted for centuries. The Galactic Concord, for all its centuries of structured governance, had no choice but to adapt. They had tried containment, analysis, and even replication. But in the end, they had only two options: run or record. And as the universe continued to shift in unpredictable ways, one thing became certain: humanity had become the galaxy's most effective, if utterly baffling, force of chaos. As the Beverage Squad's legend spread across the galaxy, the Galactic Concord found itself grappling with a profound realization. Humans did not simply bend reality. They ignored it altogether. Where other species meticulously studied problems, calculated probabilities, and followed established protocols, humans approached challenges with a mindset that defied all conventional logic. To them, impossibility was not a barrier but a suggestion, a minor inconvenience to be circumvented with a shrug and a drink in hand. High Chancellor Virex, still shaken from the singularity incident, sought deeper insight into the human condition. He convened a summit of the Concord's leading minds, Exolari quantum engineers, glimmer linguists, and even the reclusive chronoseers of the Lyrian order, to determine whether this phenomenon could be predicted, controlled, or replicated. But the more they studied, the more apparent it became that humans did not operate within the bounds of known causality. Their actions followed no pattern, no mathematical structure, No logical progression. They simply did things, often without understanding why they worked. And yet, they worked. The most unsettling discovery came from the Concord's own records. Other species were beginning to adopt the human approach. A Yilfari diplomat, previously known for their rigid adherence to formal negotiations, had recently resolved a territorial dispute by declaring, "Hold my tea," before engaging in an impromptu game of zero-gravity chess. The opposing factions, unfamiliar with the game's rules, attempted to outmaneuver him, only to realize that the solution to their conflict had been right in front of them all along. Similarly, a Reactors engineer had fixed a failing warp core by tapping into a method described as just winging it, a phrase that, while not containing a beverage reference, still carried the unmistakable human influence. Admiral Faruk, ever the skeptic, voiced his concerns. If this behavior spreads, we risk destabilizing entire systems. Logic, science, and structure are the foundation of the universe. If species begin to abandon these principles, reality itself may fracture. Dr. Lirel, who had spent weeks analyzing human behavior, shook her head. That's the thing, Admiral. They're not abandoning logic. They're simply operating under a different set of assumptions. To them, the universe isn't a rigid system of rules. It's a game with flexible boundaries. They don't see impossibility as a limitation. They see it as an invitation. Virex, his crystalline form pulsing with a deep, contemplative blue, finally spoke. Perhaps we have spent too long defining what is and is not possible. Perhaps the humans have shown us that reality is not a fixed construct, but something fluid, something that can be shaped by belief, by audacity, by the simple act of trying. The Concord, despite its centuries of structured governance, had no choice but to accept this new paradigm. They issued a formal decree. When faced with an unsolvable problem, consult the Beverage Squad. When they say, "Hold my," prepare for the impossible. When they say, "Watch this," brace for reality to shift. And so, humanity's chaotic brilliance became the galaxy's most valuable, if unpredictable, resource. They did not seek power, nor did they attempt to control the universe. They simply saw problems as puzzles waiting to be solved, reality as something to be challenged, and beverages as the perfect tool for inspiration. In the end, the galaxy learned a simple truth. Humans did not break the rules. They never even knew the rules existed.